On today's show, social costs. Are they the new public benefit charge? Hello and welcome to CEMA Energy News. I'm your host, Shelly Sindland, Communications Director at the Connecticut Energy Marketers Association, or CEMA for short. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to strengthening and protecting the future of the liquid fuels industry here in Connecticut. Our show today: could social costs be the new public benefit charge? Our energy experts say it sure looks that way. There is a new bill making its way around the state capitol that looks to tie a social cost to the use of fossil fuels here in Connecticut. Now, with me to explain this all and why you should be concerned is CEMA President and CEO, Mr. Chris Erb. Thanks, Chris, for joining us today. Let's get right to it. What exactly is this social cost?
What they do is they'll calculate the cost that flooding damage does, shoreline erosion, of asthma, of cancer, of pulmonary disease. They're basically going to say that everything, you know how the trend these days is blame everything on climate change? Now they're going to be able to take everything that they think is caused by climate change and come up with a cost of it. And then they're going to say that we have to roll that cost into the price of the fuel. You know what this is? Social costs is just another public benefits charge. That's what this is. This is just another way that the government is trying to find how to take money out of your pocket so that they can achieve their goals. So if they are able to say that for every gallon of oil or gallon of propane or gallon of natural gas that's burned, it has a social cost of $2 a gallon. Now it makes our product $5 a gallon. If wind per gallon equivalency is $4, now wind looks less expensive. It's basically how you fool and rake the game in favor of very expensive renewable energy compared to traditional energy sources. The problem is that they did it in a cute way. They said they're only going to calculate social costs for state purchasing of energy. And so homes and businesses and industry in Connecticut, it only applies to state buildings. I think it's a backdoor attempt to eventually put a social cost on fuel for everyone in Connecticut. So I think that there is a more medium and long-term risk that once they start coming up with these social costs, they will be applied to the entire economy. If anyone denies that that's not what's next, you'd be fooling yourself. And that's what I'm talking to legislators about right now. Is just that this is a huge setup for an economy-wide social cost structure that will increase the cost of energy exponentially in the future. It will be a pricing structure. It'll say for every gallon of gas, there's a $2 social cost. We'll call it a social cost tax, right? So you have the cost of the gasoline plus the social cost.
Here's the thing. People might be wondering, how is this happening? And with all the things that are changing on the federal level regarding energy policies, how does this make sense?
Well, that's a great point, Shelly. Actually, you're actually making a really good point there, because this may be an alternative to federal funding, since the federal government isn't sending money to help install heat pumps or install EV charging infrastructure. This is a different way to raise the money to accomplish those ends. This could be just an alternative pathway to generating the money it takes that the federal government has taken away to get to an EV future and to get to an all heat pump future.
So Connecticut's still taking its own course despite what the federal level is indicating.
Yeah. So, Connecticut was always going to pursue this pathway to try to electrify heating and cooling and transportation. But the problem is that the federal government now is saying, but we're not going to give you the money to do it. You can go do it. The federal government isn't saying you can't do it, but they're saying, if you do it, you have to pay for it on your own. So that's why I think you see something like this, the potential for a social cost on energy. I think that's why you see the Superfund bill, because if it generates billions of dollars, it will replace the lost federal dollars.
Chris, what do you want the average person in Connecticut to know? This is a blue state. But I tell you, I have friends, Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated voters, and they are all really upset about the cost of electricity. The public benefit charge is the big topic of conversation, whether in person or online. And for many, it's 30% of their bill. How is that fair? And now we hear about these social costs. People could end up paying more for gas, home heating fuel, natural gas, propane. The goal appears to be to have people switch to electricity because it's cheaper, but it's not. This makes absolutely 0 sense.
Yeah, they're basically creating an illusion. They're creating an illusion. Like the reality is that we know how much fuel costs. We know how much fuel costs because the commodity markets tell us what it is at its very base price. Then we understand that someone has to transport it. We understand that somebody has um to sell it, and there's cost involved, and then you get a end price. It's pretty easy to kind of follow the cost. So then you take the traditional fuels, heating oil, natural gas, propane. You compare them to electricity. Electricity's costs are fictitious, right? Because we know this public benefits charge includes all sorts of other things that are not related to the transportation of the electricity or the generation costs, right? So we know that electricity is artificially high because of that. What they're trying to do, I think, is they're going to bring it back and apply it to us to try to make us more expensive again.
Wow. So what can people do when they hear about this?
Yeah. Well, two things. I'm going to assume that by having a social cost applied to state buildings and vehicles, that that may have an impact on taxpayers, right? The first thing is it might become more expensive to run state government, or it will become more expensive to run state government for the buildings that these and the vehicles that these social costs applied to. So, as a taxpayer, the first thing you can say is, I'm opposed to this just because I don't want the state to run in a manner that's more expensive than it already is. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and by no means do I ever want this to apply to my vehicle or my home. I think that's what people need to do is people need to to see what's coming. They are basically the train is coming at the public from an energy cost perspective if social costs end up applying to gasoline in the way you heat your home.
Why would a politician take this route, already seeing the pushback they're getting over the electricity prices?
Well, there's several months before we're going they're going to be in a position where they are going to make a final decision. So there's a lot of time to educate legislators. I'm not sure how many members of the General Assembly understand exactly what this is. So I think that we are going to have an opportunity as an industry and in the general public once they become more aware to be able to speak up and speak out about it and oppose it and say, no, I don't want to see the cost of government operations increase. No, I don't want this ever to come to my home and my community. So I think that that's what people could do is to, become aware of what these policies do and don't be fooled that this only is going to apply to state government. It won't stop there. It will come to you and you will end up paying more.
So what can people do? Contact their state lawmaker? How do we direct people to make a difference here and have a voice in this conversation?
Yeah. So absolutely the best way is to email and call your state senator and your state representative. I think that that's going to be probably the most important part. The more people they hear from, just like they did on their electric bills, right? Once the public started to speak out about their displeasure with what was happening with the public benefits charge, the legislature is uh, is put this as a priority for this legislative session to try to fix this. I think that instead of being in the position where we're trying to undo something that was done to the electric industry, we need to act now to stop it from ever getting to that point. And so talking to legislators now is most important. We're going to have um, an email link that they can click, read about what the issue is, the bill number, and then their ability to reach out to their individual legislators. So the public will be able to work through us.
I'll be sure to put a link to that in the comment section or in the show notes. So people will be able to go to that link. There's already a note with the bill number, so it's easy because we don't want you to feel like this is going to be overwhelming and cumbersome. We'll help you do the work, but you'll be able to email your state rep directly, state senator directly. And that does make a difference. They listen. They listen. They pay attention to the emails, correct?
No doubt. I absolutely believe that, when legislators get elected to office, a lot of people are cynical and don't think that they're paying attention. But regardless of what side of the aisle they're on or their philosophy, I genuinely believe that, you know, the legislators that I talk to and that I've met over the years do want to hear from the people that elected them. They do want to be the best representative of their districts possible. And the only way that they can accomplish that is if they are getting feedback. And this is what we're going to help the public do.
Well, thanks again, Chris, for all your time here on the podcast. And, every session, it's something different, right? You've been doing this a very long time. And we are hoping that these podcasts will, help shed light on the continuous battles that we are fighting for our members and for the consumers here in Connecticut. Every session, there's something at stake that we take lawmakers, to task and try to tell them why this is a bad idea and why it's bad for consumers. And HB 5004 really has the alarm bells on it for us.
Yeah, for a quarter century, we've had to learn to read between the lines to see what's actually the agenda and what's actually going to be coming. And this one is pretty easy to see. This was not a hard thing to pick up on. It became really obvious as we read the bill when it came out just a couple of days ago that that's what this is. Sometimes it's hard to read between the lines. This one was very obvious. And like I said, they're going to tell you it's only going to apply to state buildings and vehicles. I'm going to tell you that this is like building a foundation and saying a house will never be built on top of it. You build a foundation so that you can eventually build the house. And that's what they're doing. They're building a foundation, a taxing foundation that will end up being applied to all products and services.
Okay, Chris, thanks again for joining us. Be sure to join us next time for CEMA Energy News, where we will tackle more legislative issues that, trust me, you will definitely want to know about. Until then, take care.